Good morning.
Okay, sure. Let's get started today and follow through our curriculum. Well, yesterday I added two new books in Google Classroom, and I also posted some work for you to do. So I'm just reminding you that it's a good thing for you to take a look at what is in Classroom. I'm leaving work for you today. It's open. So by open, I mean well, not no. Actually, the one I'm leaving today, I left last night. It's not open because that comes from Estrategias de Traducción. I think I'm giving you up to the 27th for you to send that, okay? And you're gonna do it through Classroom because it's gonna be considered summative. So if you still owe some work, make sure you send everything during the day so that when you look again in Classroom, you're gonna have something new to do. And over there, what I'm asking for is section 4, additional news articles or uh, other pieces of news. I think that's the title pretty much. And you will work doing the same thing we started doing yesterday and the day before. We went over some pieces of text which are extracted from sources, right? By that I mean newspapers, some of those are from magazines and that sort of literature. And we're working with journalists at this point because I think it's a very straightforward writing style, right? And it's a good idea, like as for us to start delving into good register because what journalists has is that they try to use writing that is a very educated, respectful of a reader, and they don't go for the colloquial or the gossipy type of writing that you find in other types of text, right? So yeah, generally journals and those pieces are very good because of the register. Register is professional. So you'll run into all kinds of things over there, right? I think that section contains some 4 or 5 passages for you to develop and work on. So how will you go about that? Well, you go into Google Classroom where it says additional resources. You should have already downloaded the materials and the one that's in Brinton, White, Cruz and Ortiz. That's the one I'm referring to that I would like you to go ahead and locate. I'm giving you the page number. I'm giving you the information required, but you need to download the book to your laptop or to your device. That is going to allow you to locate what I'm, referring to. It's in the table of contents, a section on additional news items, I think. So that's one thing. Another thing is that I'm still in the process of receiving a your breakdown of the two texts. In case you're still dubious about how to break your text, remember that Vasquez Ayora's chapter entirely leads up to that point. Okay, everything that you read about, like the unit of translation, that is not the word, of course, that is be over the word levels like phrases or chunks or maybe sentences, because all these will depend on meaning, right? This is something that Vasquez Sayers details in chapter 1. Make sure you go over and read briefly on the different elements that you will run into in a text in Spanish. That will allow you to do your segmentation appropriately. But you need to do a little bit of reading, the reading that comes before that, right? So that you can do the breakdown. What you will do on your own now is the parallel structure that is going to come right after that. And I was referring to that yesterday at pretty much the end of our session. So make sure you do your parallel structure. And that is one that you should send to my email, right? Because that's not, I'm not putting that in classroom, but I'm also counting it. So you have my email over there. Make sure you develop all that and you send it to me, and we're gonna be, you know, even, right? So that's it. Now, what is it that I am adding? I'm adding two important books that I think you need to pay attention to, right? One of them is entitled Sociocultural Aspects of Translating and Interpreting. This is John Benjamin's publishing house book. It's a very good one, right? It's a very good book. Let me see, probably maybe I could go ahead and share it here. That's one of them. Okay, let me just get access to that. Okay, you'll have to be a little bit patient concerning these materials because, as you know, these are generally freebies from internet. It's likely that maybe a document could be corrupted. By that I mean you won't be able to open it. Yeah, so and the thing is, I am going to be pretty soon down, taking those down from Google Classroom. So make sure you do your downloads as soon as you can, right? I strongly recommend that. Okay, let me see if I could get to at least one of them as for us to refer to this new additions. Okay, here we go. All right, this is one of them. This is one of them. This one is The Third Language by Alan Duff. Recurrent problems in translation into English. It's, I think, a very good one because it's more like a reference material that you can consult whenever you're in doubt about what to do with language, and it's very technical. It's one of those books from a university. It's from the University of Missouri, I think, Central Missouri University or something like that. So it's very good quality. It's not a new book. Regardless of that, I think this is worth your time in reading, right? So what I'm showing you here is the table of contents, because that's the first thing we should look at whenever we run into this. Now you have there a metaphor, the fountain and the water jar, right? A fountain has, fresh water, whereas a water jar is not as fresh, but it comes from the fountain probably, but it's not the same quality. Okay, you have to, take the time in order to understand that dealing with problems when you are translating into English is connected to sometimes connecting words, all the structures, using the right style and all that. This is hard work. Some people kind of consider this as the system's going to do this for me. Nothing will beat your diligence, okay, and preparation for this. You have also the word alone lexical problem, a bit on the structures, idioms and meaning, a translator and text and who reads it anyway, so as to bear in mind or keep in mind the reader. This is very good material in case you are thinking about some research that you would like to propose in a university or whatever it is that you are employed, right? The reason why we have lots of problems connected to the development of our work is because of this. We do not invest enough time in dealing with the what we think or what we take for granted. So you see here, dealing with idiomatic expressions will always be a problem. Dealing with metaphoric information will always be a problem. Dealing with cultural information will always be a problem. So what do I mean by this? That the problems are not going away anywhere. They're gonna be here and they're gonna keep coming back. And if we don't take care of them or we don't find ways or we don't worry about them, either they're gonna bite us, at some point it's gonna come back and bite us. It's like a dog, it's like a mad dog, or we will tend to overlook and disregard things that could be very well focus of a study. I'm sure out of our experiences, either collectively or individually, you could very easily go ahead and write a research project. I tried to obtain all the forms necessary. I didn't post them last night, but I'll post them today, the ones that I referred to. So as for the requirements for a research group, so that during this longer break, we're going to be in touch because I'm going to try to present that at Vicerrectoría de Investigación y Posgrado. This is I'm going to name and baptize also our group, and I'm going to offer you a variety of topics that could be used for research projects that are generally, when you come up with a project like that, you need to have a bibliography behind it. So probably you're wondering now, what's the point of reading all these books, blah, blah. No, no, no. It's because without theoretical support, there is nothing you will talk about. And some people tell you straight to your face, because I've heard this. Well, you're showing a lot of old books, and these old books that they're not good. Look, that's ignorance. I'm going to be very honest with you and direct. Just because something is old, it doesn't mean it is not good. By that, I'm referring to books and everything else. Okay. Of course, there could be newer versions and other things, but the problems are the same and they're recurrent. They are not going away. And languages do not change in 10 years or 15 years. Languages remain the same for long periods of time until changes occur and so forth. What people do is that they take these research topics and refurbish them into new books, but they're dealing with the same old topics. This is like the occult and the occulta that we were talking about yesterday. So you see now people talking about spiritual matters, but it's been the same thing for centuries now, hundreds and probably thousands of years of the same phenomenon. We're not talking about anything different. It's the same story. The same thing happens with these academic matters. So if you see a book that is like, let's say maybe a 70s or 80s edition or the 50s edition, what we need to look at is how many reprints there have been of this book, because most of them become classics in their field. That's the case of some of the books that I'm posting here, okay? This is a good one. It is not a new one, but the topics have been in place for a while. And I recommend reading it because here you will learn a lot about translation into English, because this is especially focused in problems that you will run into as you translate something into English. Now, if you transfer this skill, this is going to enable you to write in English very professionally and with clear criteria. Not that the work is going to go away off your shoulders, because the monkey is going to be on your back anyway. We're going to have the monkey on our back. No doubt about it. But at least we will know what to do with something that you want to publish in English somewhere. This is a very good book that is going to help you with that. And as you see here, probably, I don't know if you've been reading about methodology, Pergamon, Pergamon doesn't exist anymore. That used to be a very important publishing house in the UK. In the European part of the world, European English speaking part of the world, Pergamon. Their books are very good. Now I think they have become something else. I'm not sure what the new name for Pergamon is. Probably Oxford. I'm not so sure. But they're very good books, right? And very technical also. You will not find much of this in your own language, in our mother language, Spanish. So pretty useful. So I think it's a very good addition. The third language, that's the name of a book. Alan Duff is the author. Okay. So whenever you feel like you're in, like later when you're in your longer break and you feel guilty because you didn't read much, you go and read the third language. Probably over there you're gonna catch up with a lot and learn probably more than everybody else, because this is an excellent resource for us. Let me try again, see if I may project the other one. Hold on. Why do I do this? I do this because I think it's not. I'm not selling anything to you. But you should feel. You should feel encouraged to look at this material. Many people say things like, "I don't have much time, so make sure you show me something that is worth my time." I understand that everybody is busy. We have family. We have things to do, and those who teach at the university are getting ready for classes starting the semester beginning on Monday. So, okay, that file I'm not so sure if I could if you could download and open it. Let's see. Hopefully, you will be doing that on your own, I think. But sociocultural aspects of translating and interpreting. You have very good names over there, like Schlesinger and Anthony Pym, who's a professor in a prestigious Universidad de Granada in Spain. Anthony Pym, and he's an authority in translation. He was a professor for I think his student was Mayoral Atencio, another important name in translation, especially in the comparative linguistics of Spanish and English. So if you ever run into some material from Mayoral Atencio, you make sure you get that, because you're gonna learn a lot over there, out of a lot of academic work. So, yeah. And then you would be wondering, oh, what's the point of reading all of that? Well, the point is you're going to build some background information that's going to allow you to put together your research project and to justify and develop your publication. Oh, why do I have to publish? Well, you need to publish because that's the most important thing to do. That's legacy. Okay, we were talking about that yesterday also. The reason why so many translators embark in all of these hairy topics like the occult, because the occult is a hairy topic. By that I mean lots of the things you're going to run into will probably endanger your very soul, right? But people translate those materials anyway out of the prestige, because of the need to prove, provide evidence of what they're doing. The same thing happens with the Bible. Some people might think, now, well, what's the point of translating the Bible again? Well, that's because it's necessary to leave legacy behind. We need to always produce, right? So, but this is something that I understand. Probably someone who's not in the university environment would probably, be in doubt. But remember, taking a certificate program like this could be your entry to a university setting. And at the university, publishing is very important. Okay, you cannot like ignore that altogether. We can't. Okay, one of the most important reasons we're here is because we want to deal with publication. So I must insist very much on this. And tonight actually, I'm gonna be posting all the information required. And if you're interested, you will communicate to me, and we're going to start setting up that research group. This is something that at Universidad de Panamá is called grupos de investigación. Okay? That's what they call it, grupos de investigación. It's a research team, right? And that's not only for publication; it's also for doing larger studies or getting funding for a project, or also competing for funds, right? At Universidad de Panama, every year there are funds that are being offered. Very few people compete in the humanities, really. This is something I learned fairly recently. I thought people were fighting in order to participate because the funds are pretty handsome numbers. I think last year was probably, what, I don't know, $100,000, $100,000. Of course, they're not gonna give you a check. They're not gonna cut a check for you, like for that amount, but you'll get access to doing several things with that. What can you do with $100,000 for your research project? Well, you could buy expensive software that will allow you to do analysis that is out of reach in most of the studies that people do in our context. This will enable you to hire editors, or I don't know, maybe some advisor who could assist you in the publication of that article in international journals in English or other languages, because they all offer this service, but you have to pay for it, and the prices will range. You see, will range across different. It's like a menu, right? Depending on what you want, on how high you want to go with that publication. That can also be very good for putting together a book. If you ever decide that you want to publish a book, it's important to count on funds that will allow you to print your book. You can do it locally, you can do it internationally. Then you could take your book to Amazon, right? But for a good reason, right? Because this is going to grant you, a, first of all, the satisfaction of work well done. That's the way I see it. Something that I consider is moral and emotional, and also because this is what we do. Look, rich people, by that I mean people who are well off, they're enjoying their money. They will never compete with you in publishing a book unless this is someone who's inclined to scholarly topics. But chances are there's going to be a misuse of their resources, and they're not going to be using that for any legacy. So who will leave a legacy in society? Academia. That's the academy. That's us. So this is our mission and our call. That's why I talk to you about these things, because some people tend to overlook those things and think like, well, what's the point? What's the point of so much work? Well, the point of so much work is because we need to leave a legacy behind us. And, it's not that we have to care about others think about us, but at least if we went through the process, we need to leave something behind. Many people go through this process and they don't leave anything behind them. We should attempt to do that, okay? And that is not ego, right? That's more like our desire to move on. Okay, here we go. Yesterday we left it at the untranslatables, idioms, metaphors, and folklore. Okay, I think it goes without saying, so it's an agreed thing that these are difficult topics that are not going away. Language is complex, okay? There is complexity in this work, especially if you're trying to be respectful of doing professional work. So dealing with idiomatic expressions is always a challenge because we just don't have any of that in Spanish. Metaphors, of course, we do have, and same as folklore. But these are contextual and very specific topics that concern communication. We simply cannot deal with this any way we want because there is a treatment already established for studying this topic. So it's a good thing to take a look. So you'll bear with me. We're gonna go ahead and read some of this theory. So there is a category of language forms which are so culture bound and specific as to defy translation by a routine method. So routine treatment doesn't apply to them. These are the idiomatic expressions, metaphors, and variants, because we have other variants like a simile and others, and collections of proverbs, wordplays, and sayings. So we've been checking those out. Yeah? Proverbs, cognates, all of that. They're words that give us a challenge every time you make you run for your money. So, which could be cataloged as linguistic folklore, culture, in other words. The problem with these forms is that they're so deeply rooted in their original culture that their deep meaning has little, if anything, any relation to the surface structure, and may in fact be unique to the culture that produced them. So there is also the case of common words which have apparently valid cognates in other languages, but which turn out, on closer examination, have been changed by each culture in such ways that to use them as valid cognates is a mistake. So we cannot take for granted that we know what something means. There are layers of meaning, and this is connected to use. Remember that we have the content, right? And we have the use. We have the language form and the language use. The language use sometimes impacts uh, expressions and twists, or bend over, change, alter meaning. The case of a word democracy is a good example. It is fair to say that each nation's political culture defines the concept of democracy in its own way, and members of that nation, right, tend to apply their concept to the democracy in other nations, right? Democracy is a very sensitive word. Just take a look at controversial political party in our country, Partido Revolucionario Democrático. Okay, if you think of that party, how can democracy be revolutionary? So we know that this party appeared during a dictatorship. So how can a dictatorship be democratic? Okay, there's a lot to explain over there, and this is, something controversial. If someone comes and checks that out, they will immediately start wondering if they're curious enough, like, what do these Panamanians believe in, right? What does that mean? Revolucionario democrático. How can you be democratic and also a member of a revolution? What kind of revolution is that if you're coming from a dictatorship and there was a dictator, not a president, during the creation of that political party? So this is very strange, okay? This is very, very strange. Just to bring an example from our reality, okay? Let's think of another one. Um, could you give me a name of another political organization in Panama? Cambio Democrático. Take a look at that. Okay, cambio. Okay, we know that democracy, means that there are alternations in power. One group is gonna come and win the election, and there will be a tournament, and someone else is gonna be elected, and so forth. Alternation of power. But what is cambio democrático? So how can you enforce change if democracy already means change? So what's the point? This is redundant. And someone who doesn't know Panama will be confused about all of this. Take a look at another name. Partido Popular. All right. So popular means that it belongs to the people. So is this so? It's a very small party, first of all. So they don't have as many members as to say that the Panamanian people are members of that political party. But popular, if they have owners, more like a private club for the well-off and the fundraisers. So I don't really see um, how could that be a popular, right? And then the symbols also, take a look. That's more like, I don't know, like a blue star or a green star. So how can that be popular? No, what's popular about a star is that the stars are in the sky at night. That's the kind of popularity there is. But I've never seen a green star. What does that mean? That they are hopeful? Hopeful? It's very strange. Symbolism is very strange, and the name is even stranger, right? So we have all kinds of strange things. Um, at least when you listen to something like Molirena, you'll know that it's not democratic at all. It's business oriented. Liberal, republicano, nacionalista. There is nothing democratic about that. So you will never go into that party because they won't even listen to you. Okay. So that's the kind of thing, you know? This is what we're talking about. We have some examples here. The German Democratic Republic, the US Democratic National Committee, the National Endowment for Democracy, and the Christian Democratic Party of El Salvador all use the word in their institutional title. But clearly, the meaning changes if we try to isolate the concept or remove it for its particular political culture. The problem with these untranslatables has given rise to a theoretical notion of equivalence, which argues that, with few exceptions, it ought to be possible to find equivalent structures for these untranslatables in source language and target language. Since these linguistic forms some semantic novelties, they're candidate words for being a neologized, so to speak, right? Some new term that's going to probably, they're going to give birth to some new term. We must be willing to sacrifice stylistic formal equivalences in favor of the dynamic functional equivalences, which is more like communicating uh, the meaning, right? So, yeah, political culture is one of those areas that's very strange, very strange because people come up with names and well, they just, I think, probably don't know much about what it is that they're doing. Pragmatism, in other words, should be the governing factor. By that we mean communication and communicating meaning to the largest possible. We should be ambitious enough to communicate as much as we can. So whatever produces the closest effect in the target language is the form that should be used, regardless of wide differences in the lexicon or syntax. Idioms are the most common form of these untranslatables. So what is an idiom? Here we go again. An idiom, coming from English into Spanish now. Now we're switching and thinking about English, what they have in English or what there is in English that we don't have in Spanish. An idiom is a figure of speech involving at least two words, which cannot be understood literally, whose meaning is carried by the word as a unit, not individually. The error in attempting a literal translation should be obvious. The deep meaning can only be given by the actual usage in the culture involved. Okay, so idioms are probably the strong form of these figures of speech. The weaker form by that is like a little bit more flexible, more stable, is phrasal verbs, right? Which are also similar to idiomatic expressions. They're not the same. Idioms are more flexible and more encompassing because different parts of speech are connected to idiomatic use of language, especially if you're going for the spoken word. Remember that translation is one aspect, interpretation is another. Phrasal verbs are also a member of a family, but they're of a weaker form. Why weaker? Because they're more stable. They're just connected to verbs, right? That's why the name goes like phrasal verbs. Some examples in English and Spanish, right? Take a look. I would like you, please, to help me out, produce equivalences for these expressions listed here. A laughing matter, according to Hoyle, birds of a feather, Dutch treat, a grandes rasgos, a la americana, carne de gallina, dar una mano, el árbol de la ciencia. All right, let's take a couple of minutes and provide some rendering for these expressions. Could we go ahead and try to do so? I'm gonna go ahead and change their color a little bit for us to be clear on what it is that we want to be translated. What you find in orange, what you find also in print is what we need to deal with. Okay, so here we go. Okay, take a couple of minutes. I'd like to gain some input from you regarding these terms, phrases. Okay, so volunteers.
Hello, good morning. Uh, I
Yeah.
found I found a for laughing matter. Well, maybe it depends on the context, but I found two meanings. So, cosa de risa o algo sin importancia.
Okay.
And then, according to Hoyle, well, that caught my attention because why Hoyle? So maybe según las reglas o como debe ser. He was a writer. As it says, he was a writer, Edmund Hoyle, of the 18th century English writer, and he was
Right.
famous for publishing books on the rules of card games. And so he says that his books were considered the ultimate authority on how to play properly. Maybe that's why, well, the translation as como debe ser, según las reglas.
Thanks. Who else would like to contribute?
I have something a little bit different. Well, according to her, also like something al pie de la letra.
Good, good. This is it. Hmm.
A laughing matter is like when it's just reírse. And this is it was interesting. Like this was a Dodge Street. It says cada uno paga lo suyo. It was
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. Or to go Dutch. Yeah. To go
yes,
Dutch is the same.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And see, something that I was trying to understand much better is like birds of a feather. En Spanish es como de la misma calaña. No sé si en Panamá se
Right.
dice de la misma.
Hey, we have some equivalences, very local, like de
Yes,
su ambiente,
yes.
de su mismo ambiente. Yeah.
De su mismo ambiente, exacto. De su mismo ambiente, de su misma clase,
De su
something like
misma
that.
gente, de
In
gente en su
Panama,
ambiente.
sorry, in Panama we also say Dios los cría y ellos se juntan.
All right.
Mm.
Perfect. All
Yes.
right. Yeah. Generally, this is a negative thing to
Mm,
tell. Mhm.
yes. Yes. Birds of a feather is, yes, it has a negative connotation. Yes. 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 Mhm.
I have also that it can be interpreted as tal para cual, cada oveja con su pareja.
Okay.
Yes.
There we go. Okay. Probably it's not the highest possible register, but this is something that people could tell anywhere or write these expressions anywhere. Okay. So the cultural information behind it, it's what probably would get a translator off track, right? What about a grandes rasgos? Is there anybody who ran into something interesting for that one?
Mhm.
By and large,
That's a good one. And that's a high register one, by and large. It's more formal than anything, right? It's very formal. Can you think of
How
something less
about
formal?
in broad terms? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's right.
roughly speaking, also.
Yeah, very good. Exactly.
Mm.
So it's a good one to bear in mind because it's part of communication. So what about a la americana? What does that imply?
the American way, American
Yeah,
style.
yeah. And what is the American style?
Going Dutch.
What this? Yeah, this northern European cultures in general are individualistic. They're pretty individualistic. I don't know if you have run into anything concerning a la americana about further explanation.
That would be something like splitting the bill. think.
Will you see it that way? I don't know.
It depends. I think that it will be contextually taken, depending on the register.
Mhm. So yeah, if someone, uses this expression like a la americana, that could mean several things. But above all, we need to bear in mind that the American way is individualistic. It's like your own way. It's like your own way, not very collective, really. So it's your own thing. So probably that's what they imply here every time. uh, Dutch treat or to go Dutch, it's because over there those cultures they are very I don't know, concerned with uh, personal decisions. I think it's plays an important role. So yeah, carne de gallina. So what is that?
Professor, sorry, also like the American way, like the American dream, it could be related.
Yeah. Yeah, because look at that expression, the American dream. If someone runs
Yes,
into that, what does that really mean? What it means is that you will succeed by your own means. That's what it really means. It's like your own success gained
yes,
through hard labor, work, or
yes.
whatever. Mhm.
Uh-huh.
So
Yes.
also, yeah, reinforcing this idea of individualistic behavior.
Yes.
Good. Look at this one, carne de gallina. What does that mean to you, or how will you translate that so that it's understood in English? This is from
Bumps.
Spanish into English. Pardon?
Goosebumps.
Yeah, goosebumps. Yeah. So remember yesterday we were talking about something that gives you the creeps, or that is kind of creepy, maybe, or you cringe at something. Remember cringe?
Yes, yes,
Cringe, or creep,
yes.
creepy. I think all of that is connected to carne de gallina. Those are possible renderings for this kind of translation or interpretation. So she
Professor
got,
Cárdenas, what
mhm, yeah.
about scare me to death?
Oh yeah,
Or uh,
that's another one.
or giving chills.
Yeah, right. The chills, exactly. Yeah, but
Mhm.
for some reason, I think chill it has become more associated with relaxing. For some reason, it describes, of course, this uneasiness that you will get out of something that could
Mm.
be scary. So, yeah, we have to be careful with some of those words because they could be used for more than one feeling or emotion. I think dar la mano, that's an easy one, don't you
Yes,
think?
give a hand.
Yeah, or lend a hand. Lend a
Yes.
hand, I think it's also used. It's like, yeah, offer help and that. So, yeah, what about el árbol de la ciencia?
The tree of knowledge.
Yeah, I think it's referring to the tree of knowledge. It's like the proverbial archetype of knowledge takes the form of a tree, right? Out of which something that begins very small ends up being very big, and it's all encompassing. It has many branches and complexities, right? So it's yes, it's el árbol del conocimiento, el árbol de la ciencia. That's I think fairly equivalent. Tree of knowledge. Very good. Okay. Any
To
comment?
yeah, the word when you mentioned the word chill, yes, I heard people as an Anglicism. I've heard students, young people using the term "estoy chilling," so meaning that they're cool, everything is okay.
Right, right, exactly. So yeah, chill is a word that it has more than one definition and describes more than one emotion. Okay. So going further now, metaphors and similes are both figurative comparisons of one thing to another. In a metaphor, we speak of one thing as if it were another and characterize it indirectly in the process. So look at that line. John is a rock in this time of trouble. The problem is a bear. The troops were swaying fields of wheat. He bought the farm in Vietnam. In a simile, the comparison is done more directly using the word like or as cool as a cucumber, like an anchor in a storm. He swam like a fish. Right? So, yeah, there are different uses. And these figurative licenses in language use deserve a lot of our attention, really, because eh, they're constantly used. We're constantly bombarded by the appearance of these expressions, and dealing with them or having options to deal with them is serious business, because that's how a translator very easily either translates poorly or gets stuck in the process, or an interpreter for the same matter, right? So John is a rock in a time of trouble. So rock is a metaphor of something solid, right? The problem is a bear. So, a bear is a very dangerous animal that can easily hurt you. So it could be a hurtful thing to deal with. Um, yeah. Okay. Okay, wait. I have some sign here telling me to move away some window. I don't have any window here. Just the controls at the top. That's from Zoom. Okay, we have the troops were swaying fields of wheat. I don't know if you get that. Did you get that one? I'm gonna go ahead and highlight a bit of it. Hold on a second.
Professor, before you
Mhm.
go ahead, there are parts sometimes some of the expressions, especially when they're translated into for the youngsters, and it's I think because of the times they can distort the meaning or depending on the way it was used. But chills es escalofríos. And literally in medicine, it refers to the contraction of the muscles. And that is why it says the interpretation, could have been, for example, for a surprise or caused by some discomfort or by fear. So I just wanted to make that to the interpretation could be clarified in that sense. When we say got me chills or it gives me chills, it refers to, well, some kind of uncomfortable reaction.
Yeah, that's a very good observation you're making over there, because from uh, from a symptomatic type of perspective, it's one thing, but then also people refer to relaxing as well. So yeah, we have to be open-minded. There could be cases in which we're gonna, run into the word and with different meanings. We need to have an open attitude, right? And not like, okay, this is the only meaning to it. There could be different. There could be different. Of course, I agree with you. It's important to observe that. Of course. Take a look. When you say the troops were swaying fields of wheat, what's that? This is metaphoric, very metaphoric. What is a field of wheat like? Picture in your mind a field of wheat. What is it? What is that like?
Okay, well, fields of wheat gives me this image of or imagery of them moving with the wind, how the wind moves them.
Right. Campos de trigo. So are they hard?
Being ready to harvest.
Being ready to harvest. So
Means
yeah.
probably meaning the troops were ready to assault, to defend, to attack, something like that, or to start the battle.
So yes, if we picture in our minds fields of wheat or wheat fields, campo de trigo, or de semilla, the nature of this picture in our minds is a golden field that is swaying all by itself in the wind, because this is a rather flexible uh, place. So already swaying fields of wheat is that they were on the move, right? Because of course there was some movement of something flexible. So it's like exactly getting in motion, preparing for some type of military action, maybe. Okay, so it's not as clear, but you get the sense of it. Take a look. He bought a farm in Vietnam. What's that? So you associate Vietnam with war, right? The War of Vietnam. Everybody who listens to Vietnam, okay, now you have Vietnamese restaurants, of course, now. But in the past, back in the day, there wasn't any possibility of thinking of Vietnam, any other Vietnam than the war in Vietnam that caused so many because that was I think probably the very first televised conflict on TV, right? People watched that on TV and everybody was aware of what was going on. World War II and the other wars, there were radio wars. Radio. People listened to the news on the radio or read that from newspapers. But I think Vietnam and probably Korea were also conflicts that were televised. So he bought a farm in Vietnam. Everybody knows what Vietnam looked like, right? Explosions and napalm and all that. So a farm in Vietnam is a disaster.
Like the
You got
grave, right? The
Yeah,
plot, the share, that's the one.
exactly. Nothing good will come out of it, right? That's what it means. Okay? But if you read that and you have no recollection of any kind of what the implied meanings are, it's troublesome. You're gonna run in trouble trying to find what it
Yes, but
is.
you need a background. You need a background
Yeah,
knowledge.
exactly. This is challenging for
Yes,
anybody,
yes.
especially new translators will have a hard time. Okay. The other ones I think are pretty straightforward, right? We don't have any problem. As cool as a cucumber, fresco como una lechuga, fresca como una lechuga, right? It's in we use a different vegetable in Spanish, right? Not a cucumber. Cucumber is not as fresh as a lettuce. So as a little leaf, I mean. Anchor in the storm. This is very good. This is good imagery, good simile. He swam like a fish. Okay, he was in his environment. So the structure of metaphors and similes consists of a topic and then a comment about the topic. The topic itself poses no special translation problems, but the comment on the topic usually grows in different ways in different cultures, making an exact translation difficult. It's the same as fresh as a cucumber. So why do they think a cucumber is fresh if they don't even eat much cucumber in the United States? In the US, what they eat is more like zucchini. It's a lot more common than cucumber. If you've ever been in that context, you'll know what I'm talking about. Finding a cucumber in the States is not as easy as finding zucchini. So why don't they say as fresh as zucchini? Because I think zucchini is not associated with this idea. Whereas, for instance, in Spanish, we think of la lechuga, because it's something that I think it will rot very quickly. Probably it's the vegetable that rots the quicker in Latin America, probably. I don't know. Do you agree with me or do you see it differently?
No, I guess why, or I will ask myself why not to use pickle because that they are very fun for it, and it is sweet and sour, so probably you can refer using it as an analogy to someone that particular. Although here it is fresh, as you say, fresco como la lechuga. But I would ask myself, well, why not a pickle?
Right. A pickle. That's another one. It's a very culture specific type of vegetable that grows in that environment or something that is consumed by that population in that context. Exactly. Why not? So, yeah, very good. Very interesting. In fact, the comparison may involve things or concepts that do not exist in the target language culture of its language. For example, when translating the symbol as pure as snow in Indian languages of the Amazon basin and in Brazil or Colombia, places like that, there is frequently no word for snow available because it is outside of the tribe's experience. But the topic or notion of whiteness is known, and the best solution then is to find something which that particular culture uses as the comparison and an equivalent symbol. In the case of several Amazon tribes, the equivalent symbol was found to be clouds or the feathers of a bird. Right. So, okay, something like as pure as snow, how could that be dealt with in Panamanian culture?
I think nothing is whiter than snow. So probably that's what they're trying. So pure, so clean, so white.
And generally, uh, clean, clean, is associated with other things. You see, for example, you say estoy limpio, okay? That doesn't mean that you're clean. It means that you're broke, right? Estoy limpia. eh? And this sort of things could be confusing for someone translating. Okay, so those ideas have to be dealt with very carefully. Other problems are caused by the comparison having a different value in different cultures. For example, the English metaphor, he's an ox, right, connotes strength and massive size. But in the culture of an Argentine gaucho, it connotes an emasculated, passive, and not very smart animal. Hardly a compliment. A useful technique when dealing with metaphors to reduce them to similes, which are generally clearer in structure. Once this is done, the translator searches his own memory bank for a dynamic equivalent simile, in the target language. Once found, the translator can consult a colleague or native speaker. So this is a challenge, right? So, for example, in our region, what would be an equivalent simile to something like he's an ox? That of
Un
course means
toro,
it's strong.
maybe como un toro.
That has to be, according to what we're reading, what we need to do is take the simile, reduce, and think it through, in our memory. Think about what is it that we say that equals that in meaning, uh, that refers to someone's strength, not insulting a person's intelligence.
Well, in the interior, that is a common expression, como un toro, fuerte como un toro.
Okay. Could you think of something that you say here in the capital city, Panama? So you see, this is the real challenge, finding some exact term that means the same, the implied meaning that refers to the implied meaning, right? In the case of a metaphor like he's an ox, we could proceed to convert it into a simile. He's strong like an ox. Okay, ox being, bull, right? Bull, so male species or male cattle, right? Of cattle. So, and see what simile in Argentine Gaucho
Or
Spanish carries the same dynamic equivalent of strength. The answer would be something that tan fuerte como un caballo. Okay, probably
Right.
that's
Here
more positive.
In Panama, I have heard, and for grandparents, for example, fuerte como un roble.
Right,
yeah,
right, exactly,
that's a good
exactly.
one.
Something that equals that is not offensive because that's not the intention here. We need to preserve the intention. Okay, it's important to complement accordingly. So exactly, fuerte como un roble. That's right. If none is found, it might be necessary to abandon the similar metaphor and simply state the quality without any comparison. Era muy fuerte. So there, in this source, they propose at least translating the idea, not with the same sensitivity, right, or elegance, but at least the idea is there. Though that could be a poorer rendering. The category of proverb and popular saying is usually even more rooted in the culture. Okay. Although it's frequently possible to find equivalences, right? Then to find dynamic equivalences which convey the same impression or impact is another choice. Expletives, oaths, and swear words, this is vulgar language, right? Are a special category that must be approached carefully to avoid sounding ludicrous or offensive, excessively offensive. The principle of pragmatic dynamic equivalence should reign supreme here. And if there is any doubt, a native speaker should be consulted to accurately measure the impact. Okay. All right. If we have a proverb, what should we do? Well, we should go for an approximate equivalence. If that is not possible, then we have to think very carefully about what to say. At least the intention must be preserved, right? Let's imagine you tell someone something like, some kind of, I don't know, maybe some comment like, eh, eh, la mujer más rápida de Tegucigalpa. Okay, just to think of an example. If you're gonna say something about someone, something like that, ella es la mujer más rápida de Tegucigalpa. So what you mean there is that the person is a fast worker. How could you come up with some equivalent form, right? And finding that in English is not as easy as we can see. How would you probably mean that? Like to tell a person like you're a fast worker using some kind of proverb or made up simile or made up metaphor. Tu empleada es la mujer más rápida de Tegucigalpa, o la mujer más rápida de Guadalajara, just to give an example. So how could you put that? How would you phrase that in English? Could you think of any proverb that could match this? Something like that. Could you think of any proverb that could help you there with this?
Not a proverb, not yet, but I immediately came to my mind the Road Runner. That was a cartoon. Do you remember? A bird that runs that fast, the Road Runner, el correcaminos.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that it can be applied to birds of no, I mean the early bird gets the most warmth. That can be a possibility. Talking about receiving a compensation for hard work or early rise.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a couple here in mind. Um, and these are pretty common, believe it or not. Yeah. For instance, in English, sometimes fast workers are not praised. You have some things like hasty work doesn't succeed. It's like it's not diligent enough. So uh,
Using it as a sarcasm or an irony? Yeah, I think.
there are some expressions used that I think do not favor very much fast work because it's assume it's not diligent necessarily, right? So, for example, there are things people say like, "He who came to work never sleeps." Okay, it's like you're not supposed to stop working. You're not supposed to stop working. Um, Others like the devil finds work for idle hands. That's also common. Or only fools and horses work. Like sometimes uh, there's this vision of work being something that should take time, but you shouldn't stop, but you should keep on working. It's like work praises the man, right? All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Many hands make light work. another dollar, another day, another dollar. Things like that, you know. All of that refers to work. Good start is half the work. You see, good start is half the work. Hard work never did anyone any harm. And there are quite a few of those. So what is important, I think, is learning, right? Learning.
I think it's like an extra step in translation because it's not only to understand what it is and a possible translation, but because it's a proverb, we need to go a step ahead, which means that we need to understand where a proverb from a culture that is not ours try to convey what is that, what is the equivalent for the target language. So of course, it's an extra step, and it's much more challenging.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard like work like a slave and eat like a gentleman, like or work like a slave and eat like a white man.
Sure, I do, and it brings me beautiful memories. We had a neighbor who was she was a professor at the university, and she uses to say whenever we will ask you how are you doing, she would say here working as a slave to be to live like a white man.
So that's very racist. That's racist, but the thing is, it's true. This is what we say, and this is language. Exactly. Mm. Look, I think in English, worrying, hurrying in performing some work is not accepted like as something positive. I think diligence is connected to going slowly and doing things thoroughly. So if you're in a hurry, you're hasty, you're probably not as good as a worker. So something like telling someone like tu empleada es la mujer más rápida de Tegucigalpa. That's not a good one that we could very easily find a similar metaphor because look at this. In what we say in English is like it's not work that kills, but worry. Okay, it's like we need to continue working and not to worry, right? Or you must judge a man or a woman by the work of his or her hands. You judge a person by the work of his hands. So if there is a lot of detail, it means that the person did it thoroughly, diligently. So this is very cultural specific. I think it's very cultural specific information. Very cultural specific. Okay, dealing with these metaphors, idioms, and proverbs. Okay. The untranslatables are deeply rooted in individual cultures, require that the translator abandon any attempt to translate literally, or word for word, of course. Instead, the person should adhere completely to the concept of dynamic equivalence. Probably you've never, I don't know, maybe you've heard of equivalence, but not dynamic equivalence. So seeking the target language expression that has the same impact on the prime reader as the source language original. Okay. So Larson, Mildred Larson, remember that we were talking about Mildred Larson during our first week of this certificate program, Mildred Larson. She outlines several techniques for dealing with metaphors. Okay. She establishes a first three-step process by which metaphors change to a simile using the words as or like, right? Following this, the comparison is made explicitly so as to avoid any possible misunderstanding. The use of the ox metaphor is an example. So John is an ox. Simile, John is like an ox. Explicit simile, John is as strong as an ox. The explicit equivalent simile, John es tan fuerte como un caballo. So the ox, for Argentina in Spanish, and I think in general, so you don't say that, es un buey. Okay, I don't think that's very positive. Just like as if you're telling a female like es fuerte como una vaca. That's not very positive. That's a negative thing to tell someone or to it's a mistranslation. The intention is altered. Right? So we know that those animals are generally slow and dumb. So a horse is better, more elegant, faster, strong still, but more has more dignity. So John es un caballo. That's like the Spanish metaphor, or the simile, John es como un caballo. Okay, so here is another possible way of dealing with this. Why is it necessary to have some procedure? The procedure comes because you can really get stuck into this. So keep the metaphor in the target language if it's possible. Okay? If the equivalent metaphor has the same dynamic effect. If not, change it to a simile and translate it. Use as or like. As an alternate, a different metaphor in the target language may be selected if it has the same dynamic impact. So here the dynamic impact is something that means the same. Le fresco como una lechuga compared to the school as a cucumber, okay, for example. Or the metaphor may be kept and the meaning explained. Right? Finally, the meaning of the metaphor may be translated without keeping the image of a metaphor or simile. So there are different ways to proceed. This is when you have time and you translate. But if you're interpreting, you have to render the best you can, right? The best you can. And sorry, here is a rundown of Juan es un buey. It's good because of the different image attached to buey. Yo no es tan fuerte como un buey. It's better, but not as good. No, not still. Juan es un caballo. Good solution. Different metaphor. Juan es un buey. Okay. Possible, but awkward, right? Juan es fuerte. There's a loss of imagery here. Okay. So there's a scale of choices here. The higher up in the scale the solution stays, the more elegant and effective that is. So if you ask me, it's a different story for interpretation. I don't think there will be time to process all of this information in your mind and render an interpretation of a consecutive or simultaneous nature. So what do you think would be appropriate if you're interpreting? This is my question for you.
I'll need to research about the culture it is to be applied. First, as a way to understand or get the good rendering or interpretation of how was it used, then to have an equivalent. I guess Professor Katia mentioned that. Yes, I agree totally. We have to use it in as a reference for the culture.
Yes, the cultural information is very important. Cultural background. Yeah. So my question is, you see, the challenge in interpretation is preserving, I think, the message, not so much the elegance of the message. As an interpreter, what I would recommend is for you to go straight to number 5, because I don't think that you're gonna be able to come up. Nobody. And remember, as you're interpreting, your brain gets tired. So we get tired in the process. After you've been interpreting for 5 minutes, this is mounting pressure to your brain. So probably you will not come up with any equivalent concerning culture. So you should preserve and focus, on the most important thing, which is the message. So interpretation has different objectives. So the message is king, not so much the beauty of the information or the way it is framed or the, the cultural information that is being rendered or communicated. There is no time for that, right? In interpretation. So this could be valid for translation.
Yes,
Okay.
Professor. Yes, also because when you interpret, uh, you know, if you already understand what they are trying to say with that, it's just it's a game. Otherwise, you could be lost if you don't know what it is.
Yeah. And
You don't know what it is. How could
mhm.
you interpret something that is not from your culture? That's why you need to be very well, at least to have some kind of cultural background information about what is going to be interpreted, at least to have, so you know a little bit about the different connotations of their culture. Because it's something like that comes up to you and you don't know, how are you going to translate, as you said, just the meaning, not the simile or the metaphor? It's impossible because you don't have time. You have to
Very
keep it
good.
up.
But more than
Very
that,
good.
I think that as it's been said, or here, I think it requires also high skillfulness in techniques. I mean, to be very, very high, right, highly prepared, well prepared, knowledgeable of the techniques, and to keep the sense and not to detach from these rigorous aspect of language academy and translation.
Right. Right. Um, for many people, translation is like, I don't know, a minefield. I know. And the reason is this, exactly what you are referring to. The metaphor here is translation is a minefield. Okay. So you don't know where the bomb is, but you make a mistake or you have a misstep and bam, that's the end of it. Why? Because you're gonna say something else that doesn't communicate the information, and the audience, if it's a public event, they're your judges, and they're very harsh judges, because many of the people in the audience know the languages. They don't dare to interpret, but they're judging your work, and then you're gonna get criticism of a very negative type if you make one of these mistakes. So translation is not a minefield, but interpretation is the real minefield, really, because there's this problem, right? I have some exercises for us to discuss a little further on the topic. But I would like to stop here if that is okay with the coordination. Let me know if we could take a 10-minute break. It's already 9:42. We'll be coming back at 9:52. How do you like that?
Mm. Okay, I guess the could only be 9:55.
All right, 9:55 then. Okay.
All
We'll
right.
be right back. We need coffee, coffee.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be right back.
See you.
Professor, uh, with Professor Cardenas. So remember to make sure to register your attendance. That's important. Professor Rafael Cardenas.
All righty. Okay. So we have an exercise coming up on this very same topic of symbols. So we have some 10 common metaphors for translation. Eh, Time is money. Time is money, right? It's very important. The world is a stage. This is another one. A heart of gold. So a person who's generally kind and generous. It's a roller coaster of emotions. Situation that causes you feelings or change very quickly. He has a chip on his shoulder. Um, or she has a chip on her shoulders, like someone holding a grudge, right? Or feeling angry because of some insult or offense. Now, is there any possible metaphor you could think of for that would be equivalent? Let's try the first one, right? Time is money. Time is money.
In Spanish, we say el tiempo es oro.
Tiempo es oro, okay. Okay. What about the world as a stage? So what is equivalent to the world as a stage?
Oh, I can think of El mundo nos mira.
That's a good one. That's a very creative one. And I think it's the dynamic equivalence is there. Exactly. Very, very good. Very good. A heart of gold.
Maybe es un pan de Dios. Because
Okay, that's a good one.
we also have the corazón de oro. We also use it.
Okay, okay. Oh, vale su peso en oro. Could be too. How about it's a roller coaster of emotions?
Con sus altos y bajos.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you. Con sus altos y bajos. Okay.
We also have es una montaña de emociones.
The dynamic equivalence effect is there. En montaña, altos y bajos. It's like going up and down. Very good, like a roller coaster. Exactly. The dynamic equivalence is there. It's like, okay, very good. He has a chip on his shoulder. How could you put that into a simile or metaphor?
Maybe we say es un resentido o tiene complejo de inferioridad
Mm.
o tiene una espina clavada.
That could be something that tiene un clavo adentro. No se ha podido sacar el clavo. Okay, that's a different thing, but I think it's more meaningful, uh, more meaningful in our context, right? Take a look. Help me out. Find equivalences to this metaphoric or similar type of expressions, please. Let's go. What about a blanket of snow? What would be equivalent? Yeah, and think of the Panamanian context, right? Panamanian context equivalence.
Since we don't have snow here, I would say something like un manto verde. It depends
That
on the
that
place.
that sounds very good. Exactly.
Yeah,
Una
or
cama, una cama
uh,
verde.
yeah, or I was thinking on the image it brings about, for example, blanco en canas.
Okay, okay. The elephant in the room.
It could be haciéndonos los locos.
Hmm, okay. You know, I think the elephant in the room is more like something that cannot be ignored, something that you could not overlook.
Maybe se hicieron de la vista gorda. Depending, that depends on the context. But maybe hacerse la vista gorda. To ignore something.
Yeah, those are yeah valid for that purpose. But we
Hacerse el
don't
suizo.
say again, please. Could you say it again, please?
Yeah, sure. Most commonly or colloquial, hacerse el suizo.
Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because Switzerland, implying, of course, the implied meaning is that Switzerland is always a neutral country, right? There are wars and all kinds of things, and they just don't get themselves involved in anything. They are
Well, not really. I think, for example, in our case for Panama, being this a tropical country, Caribbean, people, it's completely different. And Switzerland, it could be a European, very stylish, very sophisticated, I think. That's completely a different environment, therefore people. So I think that it implies more that kind of difference. No hacerse tan fino como un suizo, por ejemplo.
okay. Thanks. How about a ray of sunshine?
Maybe La niña de mis ojos?
That's a very good one. That's very dynamic. Exactly. I think you captured the dynamic equivalence over there. Very good. How about to be drowning in paperwork?
I have a very colloquial one that says, estoy hasta la guacha.
Okay, that sounds very, very good. Okay. That's very naturally sounding, you know,
Yes.
sounds natural. Very good. The silence was deafening.
Could be
Un
que calla otorga.
silencio sepulcral, right? Pardon? You said that again, please?
Just an idea. Could be el que calla otorga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would that be for number 10? Or for number 9? Or
That's
number 8?
for number 10. That one.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. To me, it's more like hubo un silencio sepulcral, right? But
Right, I
there was
agree.
Yes.
no the silence was absolute, right? Yeah. All right. Could you think of another one? Okay, let's go into idioms. Okay, very good. Idiomatic expressions have special meanings derived from the cultures they come from. When translated word for word, they can be either meaningless, seem foreign, or create problems. For example, you have idiomatic expressions such as give me light, give me a light. For a cigarette cannot be translated word for word as deme luz, because there is a very close idiomatic expression, dar a luz, which means to give birth, right? A more appropriate expression, deme fuego, okay? Of course, not much in our context. But yeah, I've listened to this, people asking like, deme fuego. English tends to use a lot of compound words, which are a form of idiom. Spanish resists this trend and instead requires prepositions to tie various noun strings together, or else coins a new word. Okay. Idiomatic expressions are hard to deal with because they must be memorized or looked up as idioms, not separate words in special dictionaries. One of the books that I posted in classroom that has to do with books, I mean words. It's an excellent ebook in this direction. Check it out. That's the one that has to do with word formation, prefixation, affixation, and it has an entire section on word on compounding. And I think this is also a source of problems for translation because they're idiomatic. Word formation in compounds has a very different meaning, you know, because it's a combination of two words. Okay. We have some examples here. Okay. Try to give me some equivalent metaphor or simile, please, for each one of these. Okay, if you may. We have there, keep our chins up, got cold feet, feeling under the weather, sweep it under the rug, a piece of cake. These are fairly common ones, so let's give them a try. Okay. If you could do site translation and plug it into your rendering, that'll be wonderful. Take a couple of minutes to reflect on them.
The first one would be something like con la frente en alto.
That's a very good one because you do you know
Mhm.
where your dynamic equivalence is, right? You're referring to a body part,
Yes.
just like
Mhm.
the original. That's where the
It's like,
equivalence is. That's a wonderful one.
Or the next one would be echarme para atrás or acobardarse. Cold feet, getting cold feet at the last second.
Yeah, and that could be tener las piernas de trapo. If you referring to a body part, that'll be a little bit more dynamic. That'll be equivalent to speaking of some body part that is affected by fear or emotion. So one common one is tener las piernas de trapo. All right. Or if that is too colloquial, maybe there is another option. I don't know that you can think of.
or something like me temblaron las piernas.
Very good. Me temblaron las manos. Okay. Very good. Exactly. There you have the dynamic equivalence that Mildred Larson was explaining. If we're referring to some body part, some equivalent form is the ideal. Good.
what comes to my mind with feeling under the weather, no sé si se podría decir como achacosa. It's a little bit, could have like a kind of negative connotation, but well, it's something that got to my mind to say.
Right. Okay.
Gotcha.
Feel under the weather. Okay.
Could be also con la manta arrastrando.
Oh, yes. That's very dynamic. Exactly. Con la manta, arrastrando la manta. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Okay. That's connected to the weather anyway, because you need, what will you need a blanket for? Exactly. Very good. So to cover or protect yourself. 4, look at sweep it under the rug.
Echándole tierra o echarle tierra encima.
Okay, that's a good one. Very good. Exactly. You're not necessarily sweeping, but you're shoveling something. You're putting something in between, like to cover that up.
Or
Exactly.
digging it, or yeah. In a piece of cake, I do remember when I was at school, we will say, for example, about a very hard test, we'll say, estuvo fácil como estuvo jamón. Allow us to be very easy peasy.
Pan comido.
Great.
Chicha de piña, era un chicha de piña.
Very good. So yeah, we are okay with meaning. The problem is sometimes the register, that if we say certain things, probably the we're gonna make the writing, the style is gonna be affected. So we need to have some more options in our repertoire for a higher register. That's why it's so important to include others, right? So let's take a look at these. So play by ear.
It would be like having a sweet tooth, tener talento para la música.
Mhm. Play by ear is like bailar al son que le tocan. Okay. Bailamos al son de la tonada. Okay. Something like that. We play it by ear. Bending over.
Okay, right.
Mhm, mhm. Or something like bending over backwards.
Or sometimes people say like, bueno, eso es lo que toca. Si toca bailar, bailamos. Something like that.
Okay. Okay.
O dice cuando toca, toca.
Bending over backwards. This is very common in English, but we don't have anything like this in Spanish that I would consider is equivalent. He's been bending over backwards to help his friend move all week.
What
To
about
try,
tirarse al ruedo?
yeah, but really what it implies, the implied meaning is that you're gonna do something that is out of the ordinary. You're gonna go into the extraordinary to help a person or to find a solutions, like from the ordinary to the extraordinary. I don't know if we have something like that in Spanish. Bending over backwards. To me, that's like ir a los extremos, right? Él ha estado yendo a los extremos para ayudar a su amigo o a su amiga a mudarse. toda la semana. So how about in the dark?
Me quedé en blanco.
That's a very good choice. Okay, because you're referring to color. Exactly. There you go. Dynamic equivalence. I think we do have an equivalence for take a leap of faith, dar un salto de fe, o confiar ciegamente, probably. It refers to this idea of wishful thinking, right?
Sí, dar el salto al vacío, something like that.
Mhm. Good.
Maybe
Spilling the
say,
beans.
dejarlo en manos de Dios.
That could be also. And the equivalence is referring to something concerning faith, belief, God, etc. Exactly. That's within the same topic also. Spilling the beans. Soltar la sopa. I don't know, maybe something like that. Along those lines, huh?
Maybe in Panama we say sapear.
Right.
We also say soltar la cocoa.
Very good. Proverbs tend to be strongly linked to folk culture, especially rural. It is common to find rough, dynamic equivalence proverbs across cultures when describing common features of human experience like birth, love, marriage, occupation, personality, features, physical characteristics, good and bad luck. Okay. Duff, in the book that I showed you earlier, Third Language, makes the interesting point that the euphony, which is sound and rhythm of a proverb, gives it a punch, makes it highly effective. And that this is what is generally lost when making literal translation. He notes, for example, the difference between a proverb such as an apple a day keeps the doctor away. You see that there is some rhyme over there, rhythm, a day and away, right? Eh, and a rewritten version in prose which is bland and uninspiring. So if you eat an apple every day, you will be healthy and will not need a doctor so often. That contains meaning, but it's not an effective translation. So how could you provide something that is dynamic for an apple a day keeps the doctor away?
Más vale prevenir que lamentar.
Okay, okay. We're dealing with the same thing again. Cognates. Cognates. The difficulty is that they have different layers of meaning, right? Look at this one. Ocurrencia is a false cognate that doesn't mean event. Instead of that, what we mean is suceso, acontecimiento, or incidencia, right? It's equals most like witticism or clearer saying, some smart comment or maybe idea, right? Smart idea maybe. So oficial, so it's a partial false cognate, right? Equals of official, una carta oficial, right? Also for a military rank, a military officer as a noun, but it's not as an official, as in someone appointed in the government, that's funcionario. Right? We also have there oficio, it's a false cognate, not as an office. Instead of that, oficina would be an appropriate term, more like occupation or job, usually manual, like el oficio de carpintero, it's occupation, manual labor, right? Oficioso, it's not as in officious, instead it's used entremetido, right? Very intense. Uh, it's more cognate for diligent, responsible. Do you have any opinion concerning this cognates? In my case, something like oficial for funcionario, I had trouble with that. 'Cause really, what funcionario stands for is a public servant. Public servant is the highest register possible word, but not to me oficial, really. You find a person responsible in our context, oficial is like oficial de banco. It's more like I don't know, maybe supervisor, bank supervisor, some sort. That could be not a manager, of course, but maybe like more like a supervisor, someone who approves somebody else's work. That's more of a supervisor than anything. But for funcionario, to me, it's more like public servant. That's what it means, really.
Mhm. Same
I had
happens
trouble
with
with.
the word
Mhm.
with the word oficio in legal terms or legal institutions. It is considered a procedure. It's a document.
Right, right,
Mhm.
right, right. Same as incidencia, un informe de incidencias. Okay, you have to be careful with that because it seems you get here suceso, acontecimiento, ocurrencia. It's not that, right? So I had to translate that word once. Okay. We have ordinario, it's a partial false cognate as an everyday common. Vulgar also because someone who has rough manners or who's not well mannered, lacking domestic education or family or you know values. That's what ordinario sometimes stands for. It's like vulgar. Look at orgánico. This is also one that flows into legal translation. You have organic as in the sense of chemical, something chemical, that's okay. But also when it appears connected to ley orgánica, law, it's more of a constitution of a country. It changes completely. La ley orgánica de educación, that's education constitutional law. Papel, for instance, is a false cognate for writing paper stationery. Stationery as in the supplies, right? Necessary for doing work like that. It is not as in a report or research paper. It's more trabajo escrito, ponencia. Conferencia probably could be, I don't know, maybe. That you're going to
Right,
write that document, that you're drafting that document.
right. That word we need to actually be careful when using it because it depends on the context. For example, in at college, there was a well, I have two papers to work this weekend. Okay, and then two papers is referring to either a research paper or an essay. And in the case of papel, playing someone's role, for example, mm, that is also another possibility for papel.
Rule, very good. Thank you. It doesn't even appear here. Exactly. Roll, good. Look at here, paralizar. It's a partial false cognate equals paralyze. Freeze or suspend. El presidente paralizó las conversaciones con la oposición. To suspend, right? Okay, some of the proverbs and idioms that we're constantly, dealing with. We have a couple of these. Más bien, rather. Más vale pájaro en mano que cien volando. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? Más vale prevenir que lamentar. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Más vale tarde que nunca. Better late than never. Media naranja. Better half. Spouse. Mojado hasta los huesos. Drenched to the skin, to the bone. Drenched. Yeah, and so I sometimes, well, not sometimes, but very often correct students at the English department in my conversation classes, oral expression classes. They say that they're wet, that they're wet. No, there is no way you can say you're wet because that has a sexual connotation to say that you're wet. Okay, so don't say that. So instead, I'm drenched or soaked or something else, right? But not wet. That's not a good word to use. That's a false cognate. Mojado, not as in wet because of a sexual connotation. Look at mucho ojo.
There's,
What? Sure. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Professor.
No problem.
With the first expression lately, could be probably not far from 5 years, or could be at most 10 years. It had been used, especially by youngsters. Then they say "más bien." It's something. It's a difference in the usage of the word, indicating that something is cool, something it's good to happen. See, but then they say "más bien," and that's a new expression because we used to use it in a different way, like "qué bien," "qué bueno." See, that was my comment.
Very good contribution because that falls under the label of a fad. A fad. That's like a conversation style that is adopted by some generations. It's a generational gap uh, thing that occurs with language, and newer generations tend to like change language. That's where language variety begins. There comes this fads like más bien, it's like awesome, something
Right,
that
that's right.
is cool or okay, yeah, but they don't want to say it the traditional way. They want to say it some other way, right? Mhm. I don't know if you've ever seen the term fad, F-A-D. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. F-A-D, fad. Sorry about that. Some noise here, sorry.
No, in my case, it's a new word.
Definition I have for fad, F-A-D, is a fad, trend, or craze is any form of collective behavior that develops within a culture, a
Right.
generation or social group in which a group of people enthusiastically follow an impulse for a short time period. Fads are products of behavior that achieve short-lived popularity but fade away. Yeah.
Yes, I look for it also, and it is I would have used trend or the tendency, but in Spanish it would be la moda, es la moda, and
Right.
that's fad. I look for it because it was a new word for me. Thank
Yeah. Sure. Fad. Is there another way you would say like watch out? Watch out for this or that? In plain Spanish it's mucho ojo, but for us it's pela el ojo. That's more Panamanian. Probably that was a fad before, and now people say something else instead of pela el ojo. Juega vivo, for example. Okay, this is an image of a gaucho. And now we have to get to a little bit of the follow-up of what we were talking about yesterday. My talk on Bible versions and translation yesterday was more aimed at explaining that many translators have been at the service of the light and the darkness. Okay, many translators were occultists, and that was because of their the possibility they had of gaining power and access to circles of power, influential people through knowledge. Knowledge is power, right? Just like we say, money, time is money. Uh, Also, knowledge is power, right? So there are these equivalences. And considering that knowledge is power, someone who knows more or reads more or has access to more information is the one who knows what to do, or knows what to say, or knows how to solve a problem, or find a easier way or a solution. Not for everybody, right? It's an easy thing, and that's why translators are in-betweeners, right? In between cultures, in between human groups, and some of these groups sometimes they have power and influence. They belong to some social class that is influential or have access to resources. Many of these occultists, they were looking for ways to gain access to the elite, right? The monarchy, whatever we want to call it, the government, whatever. Now, with Bible translation, something similar occurred, but people who are into this, they're more like trying to serve the kingdom. They believe in the spiritual significance of translating a highly influential scripture for people to um, be a part of a salvation plan, right? And probably that way they could be in the grace of the higher power. So they're also serving a power. So not power in the traditional sense of money or resources of material type, but more power of a spiritual type, and in the hopes of being in a privileged position either in this world or the next one, because there is this belief of a new world, a coming world, right? That is not like this one, at least not with the same values. So translation of the Bible has been the largest single translation project ever undertaken. For some, the project will not be finished until the Bible, or at least the New Testament, is available to every person on earth in his or her own vernacular language. So this is the ultimate goal. This has been largely met, but as we were studying statistical information by Wycliffe.org, which is an important organization involved in translating scripture, biblical scripture, we learn that there are way many languages that haven't been even dealt with, and not that many people speak those languages, but they don't have a Bible or a New Testament in their dialects or their pidgins or their Creoles or whichever language they speak, right? So this is still so nowadays at present in the 21st century, 2026. So this attitude has linked a Christian missionary zeal with the science of linguistics and the practice of translation, in which that we've had a special significance in Latin America. Okay, one example comes from Mexico. Here we will learn a little bit like of another anecdote of what happened. And later on, we're going to see also what happened to Wycliffe organization in Panama also, because we need to talk about that here. So the leaders of the Mexican Revolution of 1910 believed that if the revolution was to survive, it had to make strong effort to bring literacy to the masses of Mexican peasants, many of whom spoke their own Indian languages in preference to the official Spanish language of the country. Okay. So this is especially challenging, and I think this is what has limited the expanse, right, of biblical translation that would reach to each and every individual. Most of these Indian languages in Mexico had no written form, no established rules of grammar, and no literature beyond the oral traditions. The Mexican government's solution was to link forces with Protestant Bible missionary linguists in a joint endeavor to bring literacy to the Indians. So this is historical information we're sharing here. The key to this process was an American translator missionary by the name of William Cameron Townsend, who had been working with the Kaqchikel Indians of Mexico since 1917. Although he started as a missionary, he also became a linguist in order to study the Indian languages and translate the Bible into the various languages with which he came in contact. One of the reasons why in linguistics departments you find all of this data to gloss over in indigenous languages comes from this period in which this time in which biblical translation was part of the mission for most of these religious organizations, Christian organizations in the United States. Many of them, the missionaries, they were also being trained or were trained by universities, right? Central Missouri University is one of them. I think that book from Duff that I just posted over there, I think it's an inheritance of the data obtained. Also, other universities like American University in Washington, they were also involved in that effort of understanding indigenous languages and cultures for the sake of translating Bibles or biblical scripture for them. I know also University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and some other branches of that university system in Illinois. They also attempted to do so, and there was an ongoing effort from several Christian groups like the Mennonites, because there are plenty of those Mennonites in Illinois, and they are also interested in translating and communicating the Word of God to indigenous American groups. A lot of it has been rejected by Native American Indians because of the negative story of war that existed inside the United States to free and connecting the two coasts, and the Panama Canal history is linked to part of that because of the war they had with the ponies, the Blackfeet, and the Navajo, and the Cherokee, and all of these groups over there, and now they're living in their Indian reserves. So in those places, I don't think they don't welcome much of those missionary groups or Christians, because they think what they're trying to do is erase their culture. So there's a lot of cultural resistance over there. Not so much down here in Latin America, probably, and that's one of the reasons why they have been coming. Just to give you an example, I was surprised to see the new Mormon temple in the area of Cardenas, and in that area near former American base of Clayton base. And the thing is, as I was telling you before, the Brigham Young University in Utah, that's where most of these Mormons come from. They have a very serious plan. They're going to keep exporting their missionaries, and they train them in languages, okay? Because they have a very strong, they have resources invested in linguistics for the analysis of anything concerning languages and documents and so forth. And that is why I was talking to you about this university, Brigham Young. They were analyzing the Torrijos Carter treaties and all that, because this is what they do. They're very much into that, right? Spreading their word, their version of the word. I know Watchtower Society also has embarked themselves in this. I don't know where exactly Watchtower Society is in the States, and I don't know if they have universities under their belt. Probably they do, but that is not known. For instance, I know that the Adventist Church, they have some universities in the States. In those colleges and those places, they also have this missionary branch involved in their work. So as you know, the United States has a particular situation. They're the home, the headquarters, right? The headquarters of most of the Christian Protestant churches of the 20th and now present day 21st century up to this point, right? They are involved. If you look for that in Europe, you will not find anything, because Europe has gone agnostic, really. And but the United States still has this thing, that they are involved in all of this work. So there was this interest ever since the beginning of the 20th century. You can see here, and if you want to Google William Cameron Townsend, you're going to find some very interesting pieces of information on the kind of work that he was doing. And well, the procedure is, in order for the creation of data for analysis, is, as you know, to focus on the terminology and extracting the essentials of the language that will do the vocabulary. Then they would devise an alphabet, analyze the grammar, verb structure, prepare readings and they would use Spanish and Indian language, of course. Spanish, because most of these populations are now bilingual in Spanish in Latin America, namely Mexico in this case. And then with some Indian assistance, they would prepare translation of the Bible in the Indian languages and move on to the next group of Indians with a different tongue. In the early 1930s, with Mexican government support, they explored the possibility of doing all of this work at a larger scale, right? In other places where there are all these Indian populations. So Townsend soon realized that his effort would be far more effective if he could train a larger group of linguist missionaries. That reminds me of Melquiades Arosemena, former chairperson of the English department for a long time. If I am not wrong, I think he studied it in Missouri. If I'm not wrong, I think he told me Missouri. And I recall he had books in phonetics that he revealed some of that research that they were doing in those universities, and they offer grants for people to create the data for these indigenous populations. But the agenda behind all of this effort was not only to create data for them to analyze and talk about it. The idea behind all of this was really that the church leaders, the church elders in the states, they were after ways to create missionary linguists or linguist missionaries for the sake of spreading the word of God in Latin America. That's where I think most of the data, a lot of the data that I saw in some of the documents or brochures, pamphlets that Professor Arosamena used, they came from this plan. But this is something that you find out once you start talking to some of these American people over there, because you as a Latino, you don't know, just don't know what is it that they're interested in indigenous languages and heritage languages in Latin America. The thing is that they have a religious and Christian agenda behind it, right? So the translation is because they're aspiring to translate the Bible into all of those religious, into all of those indigenous groups' languages, as a way to make sure they all have their own Bible and fulfill the prophecy, and then wait for the end of the world with the mission accomplished. That's, I think, the elder vision of linguistics is a very useful tool for fulfilling this prophecy. So this turned into establishment of what they call the Summer Institute of Linguistics. I think I'm not sure if that still exists. I think so, but it's not as active as it was before. That's at Camp Wycliffe in Arkansas, and there is also the Wycliffe Bible Society. This is in the United States. Have you ever been in contact with any of these religious organizations yourselves? That's my open question for anybody who would like to contribute or share his or her experience. All right, listen. The reason why I decided to bring this up, as a topic, it's like, it's because, look, for example, mining in Panama, as you know, is a difficult topic because that implies sacrificing, and most of these indigenous groups, they're against it. They are all out against all of that. And governments, so-called democratic, are facing resistance to all of these plans. The Catholic Church, if you have noticed what has happened before, like from year 2022 and closer to our time, they are very reluctant to mediate. They don't want to mediate with indigenous groups in Panama. The problem is, as you see, is that they reject the Catholic Church because of what happened with the Inquisition. Okay, and this lasted for several centuries. We were talking about Torquemada and some other infamous figures of the Catholic Church that burned people alive and hanged them if they did not declare themselves believers, right? So this is an obstacle. Now the Protestant churches could take the lead here, but I don't see much of that either. I don't know if you are knowledgeable about what is going on. If you could add something in that regard, that'll be much welcome as information for illustrating the audience here. Yes, at the English department venues in building J2, there is an office, right? And that office is not going anywhere else, believe it or not. That's Oficina de Asuntos Indígenas, okay? They don't want to go into any other venue, I think. And they're there because we're a language department and they want to be in a place where languages are taught or, developed. So they don't want to talk to anybody. They just want to talk with whoever they feel will respect them. So this is a serious challenge for our country to integrate these populations into mainstream Spanish culture. Many of them are bilingual, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily bicultural, or that doesn't mean that Latinos or criollos understand indigenous groups' behavior or values. And this is serious because if the gap keeps growing, at some point they're going to claim some independence, and this is starting already. They're, claiming that they're going to be independent at some point because they don't belong to any plan that considers them a relevant piece of a population. So they're underrepresented, underrepresented to a large extent in our society. So I think these biblical organizations or Christian organizations understand this reality in many Latin American contexts. Okay, the name of Wycliffe was selected to honor the English religious reformer John Wycliffe from 1330s, right? Right there at the pretty much in the middle of the Middle Ages, who had fought against the abuses of the Pope in Rome and argued that Christianity required that every person have direct access to the Bible. Thus, the Bible had to be translated into each vernacular tongue. Okay, so ever since that time, in the Middle Ages, there's been a claim for ownership of the Word of God. People wanted in their own language, and they wanted in their hands for them to read, not to be read or lectured on it. Wycliffe was an important precursor of the Reformation and had considerable influence on the ideas of Martin Luther. The Wycliffe Bible, 1380-1384, was the first complete translation of the Bible into English and was an important step in both Bible translation and Protestant Reformation. I think this is good information to know. So, yeah, once more, if you ever had contact with any of these organizations and do you understand better what their agenda is at present, that'll be a very good contribution. Now, following through, at the Summer Institute of Linguistics, Townsend taught this method. We're talking here about Townsend, okay? The American, taught the method to an increasingly effective group of American and Latin American linguists, missionaries, who extended their sphere of activity from Mexico to the United States and various other countries in Latin America. So, as you see here, this was an arm of the churches headquartered in the United States. This was an arm for a long time. Then, because of political issues, many people labeled them spies or CIA, whatever you want to call them. So that also created resistance again because of an agenda that they were, of course, getting ahead with. So, from its beginning in 1935, it's as old as the Universidad de Panama, 1935, around that time, mid-20th century. The Summer Institute of Linguistics has trained linguists and missionaries who have studied over 200 languages. It translated the Bible into many of these in 13 different countries and produced important theoretical and practical linguistic publications in many languages, with significant influence on religion and literacy in these countries. Okay, so Latin America has been a target also because it's a mission territory, really, with lots of people who have not read a Bible. Some of their efforts led to controversy. The established Catholic Church in Latin America has not been pleased at the prospect of Protestant missionaries going into remote areas to study languages, teach literacy, and proselytize by means of Bible translation. Furthermore, since most of the linguist missionaries are Americans, there is some suspicion, especially among the left in Latin America, that these people are also covert agents, of U.S. imperialism. So that takes me to the English department. I've seen at the department some American Protestants groups that have attended there to help our students practice and improve their fluency and all that. And now they can walk around without any problem, right? But in the past, that was unthinkable, right? To have these American groups coming into the university to teach English or help students like do the conversation circle practices and these kinds of things. That was very, very tall order because people would not be tolerant of their presence in the university campus venues. So I could say probably these times are better. There is more tolerance, or I don't know, maybe some of that left ideology has become more flexible and open. Along those lines, I should tell you also that I went into the Instituto Confucio at the university. Have you ever walked in there? Anybody? Have you been curious to go in there? That's what I ask. That's the one that's near J2 building. Let me know if you've been there ever.
Well, unfortunately, no, I've seen it. I've passed by and I've seen, sometimes I see students from public schools there, maybe, I don't know, taking some courses.
Have you ever walked in there yourselves? That's what I'm asking.
So, no, no.
My question is, why not? Why not?
Oh, now that you mention it all, I'll do it. I'll do it this semester to see how it looks or what is it that they do there.
Congratulations, Professor, because the reality is that many people don't even walk in there because they think they're gonna have their visas canceled. I've surveyed some people and that's what they tell me. They won't walk in there because that could get them in trouble. So um, today, the reason also I brought this up is because today in the news, if you check out Instagram or I don't know whichever news service you look at, or maybe you go online, La Estrella de Panamá or prensa.com, you'll discover that there's a professor from the university who lost her visa or had her visa canceled. Did you check that out? Today. This came out today. Actually, two faculty members. Did you check that out? Did you see it?
In what newspaper?
It should be across the newspaper media, across the media, I think. I didn't see it in any newspaper yet, but I've seen it in the media here, and I'm sure that is going to be a scandal. I'm gonna get ahead and let you know about it so you'll know when you find it, because I know you'll be curious about this. Now you're thinking, right? Now you're thinking. I got you thinking and interested now, huh? Okay, listen. That was Anayansi Turner from the law school, law faculty, Facultad de Derecho. She had her visa revoked today by the U.S. ambassador. And Julio Yao was the writer from, and I don't know if he's still so active faculty, maybe he's teaching graduate programs, I don't know, at Administración Pública, Public Administration faculty. And some other Chinese national, Chinese Panamanian national, they had their visas revoked by Marino Cabrera. And the reason is on the grounds of defending the Panamanian ties with a Chinese embassy and their agenda in Panama. So this is serious business now. And I've asked some professors like, why don't you go into Confucius Institute? Say no, because I'm gonna have my visa canceled. So what do you think about that? I'd like to know your opinion here.
So, but do you know of someone who has entered there and then got the visa canceled?
No, But what I'm trying to inquire here is what your feelings are concerning the existence of this Confucius Institute at the University of Panama. Look, last year I was delivering conferences in different scenarios, both in the university and outside. Ponencias, I was delivering some of those. And the topics I was developing were linked to internationalization of the university. You know that our country has been subject to influence by the different foreign relation departments of these major embassies of superpower countries. And international scholarships are a way for them to influence and detect individuals who could help them further or advance their agendas in countries of interest. Programs such as Fulbright, Erasmus, Confucius, um, um, all of them, they have some political element in it. And that's because the governments that sponsor these visas and sponsor the programs, they're generally looking for ties, developing ties, or not having spies. No, no, but they need to establish some community, and the first step in establishing a community is detecting individuals who are in favor of their cause. And if they could influence you ideologically, they would do so. This is part of the agenda, right? And eh, there are all kinds of situations related to this. Eh, I don't want to go into that in detail, but all I can say is that just like the religious headquarters or the Christian headquarters in the States that come in order to translate the Bible for the community, they have an agenda too. Every one of them has an agenda. They have a plan of what they want and what they want from you. They want from us. Yeah, and as it seems, uh, whoever declares himself in favor or herself in favor of one side will have a problem. That's the way I see it. Okay, and this is appearing in the news. So a lot of visa cancellation and a lot of threatening is taking place at present. But you won't believe me, but if you walk into the Confucius Institute, guess what? You're going to find lots of information in English in there. Okay. And I've talked to someone who traveled to China, and they told me if you want to go ahead and do some graduate studies over there, you have to speak English because everything is going to be in English. So you're going to go and study in China, sinología or whatever it is that you want to study without some English background. You need English also. So the dominance of the English language is a very serious business. And of course, they've tried to influence the teaching of languages. I'd like to ask if at the language center of the faculty, are they teaching Mandarin courses? Chinese Mandarin, I think it's taught mainly at the Confucius Institute because this is their mission. And they want to make sure they have someone appointed by their embassy to teach that language. They don't want to have anybody teaching Chinese who's not from their group, from from their staff. So that's the case here. So you see, this is an important piece of information, I think. It's worth the effort analyzing this, right? Because we just don't know. really, what's really going on, and we need to pay more attention to what people say. So look, a number of Latin American nations, including Panama, canceled contracts with the Wycliffe Institute, okay, for political and religious reasons. I think that had to do with the Catholic Church in our case. If you know more about this and you have more information, please go ahead and say something. So, look at the case. Translation could be a dangerous activity. Look at what happened in Colombia. According to my sources, this happened because of the activities they were doing, or because of their presence. So uh, I think we haven't had anything like this yet, but this is likely to happen, especially because many of these organizations, they just don't reveal what their agenda is, and they move on with their agenda as they are doing something else. But they are not very open concerning these topics. Okay. I don't know if there are any final comments concerning what I was just referring to. Alrighty, we're moving into register, style, and tone. Okay, within a given language, and even for a single individual, there are different forms of language to be used at different socioeconomic levels and situations. So clearly, the style, tone, and feel of language will be different if individuals speaking or writing are engineers, right? Bus drivers, doctors, students, street people, politicians, spouses, etc. Any one individual in a society speaks within or with a different style when communicating with one's boss, peers, family, lover, children, cat, or dog. Style and tone are also conditioned by the specific circumstances of the communication occasion. Linguists refer to these different levels of language as the register of the language. And this is important to the translator because he or she must attempt to transfer the same register from the source to the target, lest some meaning be lost, right? So according to theories of language, The principal social factors which determine the register include age, sex, class, occupation, caste, religion, country of origin, region, schooling, and degree of bilingualism. We can also classify the registers as ranging from the excessively formal, pedantic jargon, pedantic, like very, very refined, too much, through formal, just plain formal, neutral, which is 50-50, put it in other words or in numbers, casual, which is colloquial, and vulgar, which is ludicrous or offensive, right? Those are categories of register. The range of register can be illustrated by examples, okay? Pedantic is, take a look. You have different levels here, right? For instance, for expired for something that is passed or passed away, that's probably a little high, it's a higher register. So you have pedantic is expired and vulgar will be croaked. Casual kicked the bucket, neutral died, formal passed away. For face, take a look. Neutral be face, plain face, but pedantic's visage, foremost countenance. Casual is the mug, right? And vulgar be the kisser, that's the face. For drunk as a condition, see, pedantic is inebriated, that's too fancy. Formal be intoxicated, drunk, then casual plastered, and vulgar be hammered. So this is how register works. So essentially, as we said before, social class, age, sex, affiliation, professional affiliation, etc. So when we talked about comparative linguistics, we observed that English has a tendency to be very concise and dense because of its ability to string together adjectives and nouns. Spanish uses more phrases, right? American English, especially at the upper levels of register, as pedantic, jargon, informal, does this to excess, a characteristic which causes some difficulties when translating into Spanish. Thus, the bridge becomes a load-bearing facility. Students become a student body, right? A book becomes reading material. Okay. The higher registers of Spanish use their own idiosyncratic devices consisting of some, language figures such as circumlocution, imagery, elaborate phraseology. When translated into English, tend to sound bombastic and comical. Okay? A frequent indicator of an inexperienced translator is the mixing of registers, so that there is a jarring note in a different register in a text which otherwise seems normal. Duff, from Third Language, book in your classroom, has identified this as one of the features of third language of translators, which will be considered, right? Translator must bear in mind that the register of a text is part of the meaning and must be conveyed across the language gap just as much as meaning carried by the lexicon and the syntax. There are times when the translator is sorely tempted to clean up the text in the process of translation to make it sound more appropriate. So sometimes this makes people uncomfortable, right? There are terms that are very difficult to come by with explanation, right? There may be also concern that if material is left at a low or inappropriate register, the translator will be blamed for bad translation. That this type of change can also change or alter the deep meaning, right? And that'll be editing, not translating. We find that legal translation faced with translating obscene epithets, which a woman stated her husband had hurled at her during an altercation. The translator did not wish to offend anyone and substituted much milder terms, and in the process distorted the deeper meaning of the legal document. So we have to understand that there are limitations to this censorship, to put it in other words. You may censor yourself, but not to the extent of changing the story. Right? So here the guiding principle is if there is a low register phrase, gigo, right? Gigo, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Okay. Have you ever seen this term? So my question is, if you find some, you know, very vulgar term, what is the appropriate thing to do with it?
Well, here I think that what I will do in this case is by understanding what is the meaning or the sense, I and identifying the low register, I will try to improve, not, to improve using an expression that is not offensive, insulting, but not changing the meaning. So, in trying to being faithful to the original purpose of the text or document, but trying to make it a little more decorous. That would I say.
So the criteria here is garbage in, garbage out. So to be faithful, you'll have to report the cursing of vulgar expression, because we cannot censor anything and then expect us to uh, be acknowledged as like good translation or a good translator. It's important that the person knows that you have to be faithful, right? We cannot change, alter the deeper meaning. So, for example, for drunk, you see here, it's vulgar to say someone's hammered. Neutral to say drunk. Drunk is a commonplace term to explain that condition, right? Inebriated is formal.
Right, and that's what I was referring to, that there would be words that would be more elegant to be used, but stating the same thing.
Exactly. But then we cannot, since we have to render our version as similar as the original, then we cannot censor anything. Okay.
Yes,
This is
because
important.
of the context. That will depend on the context, as you said there, what kind of register and what kind of translation will be for. And if it's going to be legal, cannot be the same as it's a colloquial one. But yes, we need to translate the words, the broken words.
Yeah,
Because
this is very important because some translators think that they are censors. You're not there to censor anything. You're there to render a faithful and natural version in another language. Either if you're writing or translating, I mean, translating or interpreting. So, okay. Okay, I think we went through this exactly. Now, this is important. And the reason why I think this is here is because when you translate, the higher register words tend to be longer. And that is something that you find in academic writing. In academic writing, you get rid of all the idioms, and instead of saying like catch up, you'll say something like, um, um, let me think of a good example that is a clear one. Uh, okay, you could say instead of go on, you may say proceed, proceed. And you what you do is that you provide longer versions, even though go on has two words, proceed is a longer word. You see? So what you do is refined high register English renderings, they tend to be longer, right? In Spanish, they're already long by because of syntactical reasons. Eh, but there are other things that occur here, and this is an interesting topic for research. Eh, how you improve register in writing. It's a very good material uh, for helping people write better, um, or I don't know, to analyze, improve writing, improve production, uh, coming out of the low registers that are very common. So what we speak is generally neutral to vulgar. We don't deal much with formal and beyond. So, and that's a part of language that's secluded. It's like, you're like locked out of that if you don't read much, or if you are not someone exposed to higher levels of communication. Mhm. So that's the thing. Okay, here we have, you look at, there is on the left, on your left, something that's value. This a up and down arrow, a value, right? We have pleasant, and that overlaps with unpleasant, right? So we have there up there delectable, okay, acceptable, unpalatable. Okay, we have a continuum going from um, formal, we have neutral, and we have vulgar. Right? You have the registered line in between. You have there nice, fine, and awful. But there are levels. Of formal, you have delectable. I will translate that as a eh, deleitable or something like that. I don't know if the word is okay. Okay, aceptable. Okay, unpalatable is about imposible. Okay, probably imposible de comer. That'll be in the formal continuum of pleasant, unpleasant. Yeah,
Indigerible.
indigerible, incomible, something like that. Exactly. But then neutral is in the middle. Nice, bueno, fine, bien, awful, malo, okay, desagradable. Then you have vulgar at the other end, cool. I will translate that probably as bien o bueno, okay, okay, bien, and then crummy. I don't know if crummy is familiar to you. Could you think of a translation for crummy? What I
Can you
have here is
repeat your question again, please?
crummy. I have some synonyms for crummy. Shabby or cheap, you know. eh, Malo. Okay, I don't know. I cannot think of Spanish. Let me see. Probably we do have something like that in Spanish. Words that describe something that is so maybe there is a word. Cutre. I found it in Spanish. Cutre. Um, um,
Pésimo.
yeah, that could be too,
Mm.
right? Crummy, cutre. And some people have very harsh words here that mean that asqueroso. Okay, that's crummy. So this topic on register is a serious thing, and it deserves all our attention because I think this affects translation and communication very much. So you see here we have pleasant and unpleasant, and you have formal, neutral, and vulgar. They're different, and not all the topics have that variety because we don't speak about all these topics all the time, right? Okay, so let me see. Okay, yep. I think we have approached very much the end of what I had for today. Tomorrow we're gonna be moving into some other interesting areas. Probably we're gonna have some more exercises. Um, and tomorrow is gonna be our goodbye for the longer break. So you should expect some additional work in classroom. Not that I'm going to make up anything new. No, no. What I'm planning to do for tomorrow is post in classroom two PowerPoints. Okay, you're going to see one that has to do with historical matters that we've been discussing in this certificate program. And I'm going to give you a worksheet for some reflection that you should do based on the information that you have learned about the role of the translator, an interpreter, and the importance of historical events uh, that have affected the activity or the occupation, the profession of being a translator. Okay, you're gonna find that information in one PowerPoint, and then I'm gonna give you a sheet for the worksheet for this, reflection. The other PowerPoint is gonna be about cognates and proverbs. And that one is going to be for you to go ahead and proceed, analyzing what is there, um, what, okay, if you have one very common saying or proverb, how many options do you have in your repertoire as a translator or as an interpreter, right? For you to provide, depending on the context and so forth. And if you could come up with at least one sentence which will plug in those sentences your um, use of proverbs or idioms. Now that we have added metaphors, probably that's going to be there also. But I'm going to try to focus mainly on the large number of cognates that we've been dealing with, because they're already tricky enough, like for us to make mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes with cognates sooner or later. And there is nothing like a perfect translator. No, we will all trip over the same, because that's how languages affect each other. We cannot do much about it. So this is work that is going to be for you to do during your recess. This recess is going to last. We're in March. It's going to be the whole month of April, whole month of May. You have June, and then in July or August we're going to be meeting again. So you're going to have at least 3 or 4 months to do some of that reflection. So I'm going to post there some work for us to not to abandon, what we're doing. Also, I'd like to inform you that I'm going to take down those books from Google Classroom by tomorrow. So if you haven't downloaded anything to your laptops, please proceed and do so, because after Friday, I'm going to take that down. It's really consuming space for my Google account, because I'm receiving tons of emails. So that's something, that's a space that I think I need also. So that's going to be taken down on Friday. So if you haven't downloaded Estrategias de Traducción, the Brinton White book, please make sure you do so. Same as with Translation for Real Life Context by Remy Attic. Download that one and the others, right? The others which are over there, especially Vasquez Ayora's book, because I think if you're really interested in working with something valuable, that's a book that you need to pay attention to, because you'll seldom find something that good. Tomorrow, I'm planning to post also. Well, tonight I'm going to do that so that we tomorrow get a chance to look at those. The documents necessary for drafting a research proposal at Universidad de Panama, along with the requirements the Vice Rectory of Graduate Studies has for setting up research groups. I'm going to be posting that information, and then I'm going to allow you to freely decide if you're interested or not in joining a group. So that's going to, be probably useful and positive for the development of some research projects. If you have projects on your own that you want to go ahead and do, and you need company, or you want company, because this is another thing. You don't always want company for this, right? But if you do, and you think you could benefit from associating with other professionals, then you could do so. Not that I'm asking anybody or forcing anybody to do anything. I will never uh, uh, coach anybody into any of these things. So this is volunteer and willing work. But then I have to, let you know about this. If you talk to any authority at the university, we have a serious bottleneck publishing papers. Many people cannot access higher positions because they're not publishing, especially if they're looking for something called nombramiento por resolución. This is serious business. You need to publish. And translation has the advantage that you can publish that in English and Spanish. Publishing in English has some limitations. Sometimes you have to sign contracts with those journals. Sometimes they want you to pay for an editor to go over your work, and that takes extra time, or extra money, resources that you have to invest. And there's so many things that get in the way. But if you could find a local or an international journal that publishes uh, work, research that you set up, well, that's very beneficial. The earlier you begin with this, the better that will be. So I'm going to be posting all of that. For example, some students of mine here are in the process of preparing for their defense of their final project, and they don't know what to write about. Okay, they're asking for everybody to help them out, reading and rereading and rereading and rereading. I mean, you cannot live like that. Okay, you have to know what you want to do, and you should be always going back to that so that you have a lot of experience dealing with the topic of your selection. You cannot have anybody assist you with that kind of work, because this is academic and this is unethical. You cannot also, it's not okay if you're looking for someone to write something for you, like a thesis or proyecto de intervención or anything like that, or trying to quote from people like, how much would you charge me if you write this for me, because I don't have time, I'm working 2 jobs and things like that. I understand those limitations, but we have to find a way to comply with everything in an ethical way. So that is why I suggest us to, I don't know, probably get into some research group or so. Something has to happen, and that's the way I see it. I don't have anything else for the morning. I don't know if our organizers have a word.
Veronica? Well, thank you very much, Professor Cardenas. Thank you for all the ones that attended today. And tomorrow is going to be our last day for this module. And then after that, we're going to go into a longer recess, as Professor Cardenas already pointed out. So, and he also told you to download all of the material that he has uploaded because it is taking too much room in the Google Classroom. So, make sure you do it because it is very good material. Well, have a nice day. God bless you all. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you tomorrow.